we just come to the conclusion then, and I would request Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, Shri Shakti Sinha, and Shri Nitin Gokhale to make their valedictory observations, and then we conclude with lunch.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Anirbanji. I think to me, this morning was so fascinating. It was so refreshing in terms of broad impressions that are coming out. To me, 3 points are of key significance, which today, across the presentations we have discussed, and the commonalities have emerged, irrespective of the sector that one has dealt with. And I think that is the pivot. That's the philosophical framework. And I think with the Nehru Memorial Museum and Mr. Anirban Ganguly, I think we can further strengthen the philosophical connects that are key significant in terms of how practical dimensions are spelling out themselves in different domains. Number one is the comprehensive approach. I think Kishore was not there when he said comprehensive approach. I think Uttam was there in terms of how this is coming in. Professor Kirk was there. Everybody emphasized on how this is coming in, whether it is bringing in security dimension, as Mr. Gokhale pointed out, development dimension, the global dimension, everything, but the comprehensive approach, the silo-free approach. That's point number one. Second, to me, I think is what Shakti Sinha ji very rightly mentioned, is in terms of nudging or as I said, motivation. So people's participation. People's participation is the crux. So adopting linked, integrated approach with people's participation. And this definitely gets sort of more reflected through cross-domain connect, cross-border connect, the neighborhood first policy. Whatever dimension of Prime Minister's thinking you bring out, it has that facet to have a larger picture. Now, what is it doing? So that's my third point. What is it doing? It is contributing to this idea of new style of governance, the new paradigm for development. And they, again, sort of 3 points I have. Number one, which I myself emphasized, in terms of indigeneity of the thought process. I mentioned of Dattopant Tengri, but then Deen Dayal Upadhyaya is not far off. The integrated humanism is dwelling out across the larger thought process. So indigeneity element is very much there. We are not implementing sustainable development goals because they have been told by United Nations. And this is the reason why India failed in Millennium Development Goals, because they were told to us by somebody else. Until unless we are convinced, until unless we are dedicated to it, as Kishore very rightly said of the Golgappa experience, I think until unless people themselves are changing, country would not change. I think Shakti Sinha ji very rightly mentioned that government may say whatever they want to say. People would have to change. Our own approach has to change. So indigeneity based on our experience. So policies based on our experience are absolutely essential. Whether we bring in those heavy names that I just mentioned, but I think our own experience-based bottoms-up policy approach is needed. Second, people-planet participation. That, I think, is absolutely central to this process. And third and last is blurring away of boundaries. And blurring away of boundaries are coming in from within the government departments. They are coming in across various fields. So security expert, development people from water and Swachh Bharat, everybody coming together. So breaking away of silos is key, whether it is in departments, whether it is fields, whether it is in themes. Would that also translate to neighborhood policy? Well, I do not know, but definitely blurring away of boundaries is possible if we apply sustainable development goals, if we make our borders happy, we make our borders addressing the question of development, and that way India committed for sustainable development goals, not only for India, but also enabling Bhutan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Afghanistan also achieving sustainable development goals. And for that, adopting programs, transferring them to our neighboring countries with our might that we have. And I did a back of the envelope calculation. It's very clear every year India is giving close to $4.5 billion as India's development assistance to other countries. A country which was dependent on aid, now we have shrugged off that, and we are ourselves providing development assistance. So I think there is a possibility of that. I would stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Anirban. I'll just sum up in 2 or 3 things, because I thought some things that I left out because of lack of time that time. Basically, in the security and foreign policy domain, what has happened is the bold and unconventional approach which the Prime Minister has adopted is because he is not inhibited by any past conventions. Just because it was not done in the past does not stop him from doing something that he has done. For instance, on the first day itself, when he was taking office, when he was being sworn in, to get all those leaders from the neighborhood to come there, in the normal circumstances, the MEA would have taken perhaps 2 or 3 months to get heads of states to come for a function like this. But that his team, which had not even taken office, could get it together and get them there itself was one indication of how he looks at the unconventional and bold steps that he can take. I think at the base of it is his thinking is that a secure and stable India is a must if India has to actually pull its weight and punch according to its weight in the international arena. Secure and stable India and the neighborhood is required. So therefore the neighborhood first, the outreach to the neighborhood is extremely important in this foreign policy outreach that he has done. And he's not left out even smaller countries or going to smaller countries like Seychelles and Fiji. The Indian Ocean diplomacy that we talk about, I think is extremely important. There was this outreach to the Middle East. There's an anecdote that I mentioned in the book that the Prime Minister was flying back from Ufa. Ufa was a breakthrough meeting with Nawaz Sharif at that point in time. And they were going to the Central Asian republics where, when they were on the Air India 1, he mentions, looking ahead, he mentions to his NSA that this is all right, I mean, this may work, this may not work, but we don't seem to have a personal, I don't seem to have a personal equation, or we don't seem to have very close rapport with the leaders in the Middle East, in West Asia. So I think we need to do something. So on that, at that very moment when they get off at Turkmenistan's capital, Ashgabat, and I think the NSA and the Foreign Secretary start working the phones, they reach out to the Dubai Prince, the Prince of UAE, and within a month the Prime Minister's outreach to the Middle East starts. Everybody expected him to go to Israel first, but he finishes UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey, and then finally goes to Israel this year in July. So it's, you know, the complete unconventional approach to foreign policy, which the traditionalists do not like, obviously, but he's done that. So in security domain, similarly, small little things like policing. The DGs of police used to meet in Delhi every year. There was a routine, meetings that used to happen. The director IB used to address them. The Home Minister used to address them. And then evenings used to be the usual cocktails and parties and dinners. They used to go away. He just wanted to end that. So he shifted those meetings, that annual meeting, to distant places. So first was in Guwahati, second was in Kutch, third was in Hyderabad, fourth we don't know where it will be. And those are working meetings. So for instance, during breakfast, he will sit with 7-8 DGPs who are battling left-wing extremism. Get inputs from them personally and ask them to do the presentation the next day, and then follow up. The PMO will ask for a follow-up. At lunch, he would sit with people, the states which are facing radicalization. So Kerala, Maharashtra, Karnataka, they will sit with him. And maybe at dinner again, a small table, high table, there will be people from the peripheral states, the northeastern states, who are facing a different kind of a problem. So a personal connect he is established, he has motivated people personally and told them, although police is a state subject, only that much he can do, but he's tried to do that. And one small little anecdote I want to end with, like he told the police officers that you seem to have lost the connect with the people. So why don't you IGPs and DGPs go out into the market in the busy time in the evening in your uniform, walk the market, walk amongst the people, get to know them instead of going in your Lal Batti cars and sort of making people fear the law rather than respect the law or coming to the law. So Lal Batti is gone, of course. I don't know how many DGPs and IGPs go down to the market and do it, but that was a suggestion. And one final suggestion he had, that how many villagers or citizens know about police martyrs? We seem to know about defense martyrs or armed forces martyrs, but we don't know about police martyrs. So if somebody has lost a life fighting for the country, please at least put up that constable's photograph in the school from the village that he comes from. Maybe that will inspire more people to come into policing. Small little details, I think that's what the NSA was telling me, that there's not a single meeting that we have on space. Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas has been taken to the neighborhood, the SARC satellite. And who would have thought that SARC satellite would work? Everybody wants the pie of that cake now, that satellite. So there are a lot of these innovations that have come in. There is much more cohesion, there is much more boldness, there is much more attention to detail, which was missing, and I hope that this will only just continue so that we become more secure, more stable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nitin. Since he ended with an anecdote, let me start with one, too. Building on what Kishore said, in our village home, long time back, we constructed a small pit toilet. But I remember using it and everybody around me saying, how can I do it inside a closed room? It's always healthy. It's always healthy to go out into the fields and get fresh air, That's healthy. Similarly, when I was doing some field work in a village called Amur, the north bank of the Kaveri, in the undivided district of Trichy, now must be part of some other district near Musiri. And the very first day I was there talking to the village accountant, the Karnam as he was then called, and then wanting to go to the bathroom. So next to the Panchayat Ghar, which incidentally was inaugurated by a gentleman called Mr. S.K. Dey, who was India's Minister of Panchayat Affairs in the 50s, So lovely Panchayat Ghar, lovely toilet. Toilet kept under lock and key. Why? Somebody will use it and it will become dirty, So it must be kept pristine. So yes, it is a matter of tremendous amount of behavior change required. It's not easy to come. Other countries have demonstrated it. It is just that we don't have the luxury of time. What took the West hundreds of years, we have to accomplish in less than decades. But the guiding principle, I think, is, and take up a bit from what Sachin had mentioned, is that all this does not require an ideological basis. The old rigid silos of the left and the right really have become quite, what should I say, vacuous, redundant. And that what you require is a far more pragmatic approach. What works? What works for what purpose? So therefore you must have the purpose in mind, you must know the problem and then connect the two. And that is far more important than, and therefore sometimes you need a whole of a systems approach. Sometimes you need a very, very minutiae micro approach. Because for different problems, you cannot have the same set of solutions. Which is why a country of India's size, multi-level government, as I say, and different portions of the country moving at different speeds, at different one, there are different levels and they're moving at different speeds. We cannot have a common kind of an approach that works everywhere. And which is why it makes things all the more difficult but important, which is where the people come in. Ensuring that the people have agency, are treated as people with agency, is far more important than anything else, because if the end of the day, if the citizen is not involved in governance, if the citizen is not involved in improving the state of affairs of our society, then we are in for really very serious trouble. That has to be accompanied, of course, by government delivering much better services. Now, service delivery is not a sine qua non for economic growth. It is an essential building block only, and therefore whether it is in sanitation, whether it's in direct benefit, whether it's electricity or in LPG, all these are required to be done, but they're required to be done as building blocks only. That they are not the end game, they're only a part of the process. And as I said, in doing so, not being ideological, but being contextually driven. So no textbook approaches will work. That does not mean we stop reading, of course, but we learn from each other and then try to work out what works best in our. Now, obviously, our delivery mechanisms need to be cleaned up. And the emphasis on that, but the trouble with cleaning up leakages, trouble with cleaning up, bringing down transaction cost, trouble with ensuring the rent seeking is not there, that the transition is very difficult because at the end of the day, leakages, rent seekers, those who collect transaction tax are in the system. It is going into the system. So once those sources, those oxygen is denied to them, until the alternatives come in and replace them completely, it's not going to be easy. It does lead to tremendous amounts of disruption. If we didn't have black money, we would have no construction in this country. So therefore, how do you move out of a situation where things become clean is not easy. It has taken people days. And yet, even today, the best of economies are at least 20-25% still off the books everywhere in the world. So it's not easy. And therefore, when we have disruptions, we should understand that this is bound to happen. So the challenges we face, as I said, are literally limitless. Governments at any level cannot be doing everything. Therefore, there will be some areas, some spheres where we work much, much faster, others where we'll be much, much slower. But as I said, at the end of the day, we have to do in decades what the others have done in centuries. And I think we are on a good track. One should not get easily upset by an odd figure here and there, which does reflect the fact that the system has weaknesses, and transforming systems with weaknesses does lead to disruption, does lead to temporary setbacks. But I think without those setbacks and disruptions, we would not be able to move forward in a very, very sustainable manner. Let me thank all of you for being here, for spending time listening to us. Hopefully, as many of us have said, you would not only buy the book and read the book, even if you don't buy the book, read the book, though of course Shobhit would want you to buy the book, is the fact that you would tell us what are the ideas, because nobody here has a monopoly of wisdom, nobody here has a monopoly of knowledge. And therefore, the more feedback we get, the more inputs we get, whether it's the government or people like us or all of us, the more feedback we get, the better chance we are of becoming a better thing. So let me thank all our panelists for diligently doing their job, for being a lovely audience. Please join us for lunch.